we going, everyone? All right, slowly but surely we're transplanting everything we can salvage out of this garden bed in the middle, because we're going to raise it. Well, we're going to level this off and then put raised beds here instead, because I'm giving up on the weeding. You know, we say companion planting, but I don't want the weeds to be my companion plant. Well, couch is the main problem that we have here. I've got some garlic chives. Have a look at this. Clumped up like crazy. We've divided these a few times now. There's not a lot of soil clinging onto here. And what I mean by that is we haven't got any aggregation going. Well, not a lot of it. You can see a lot of exposed roots. And that's because I simply haven't been watering this garden, but it's dry as a bone here. And well, I wasn't avoiding to kill the plants. I wasn't trying to, but the fact that we've got lack of moisture, that's what happens when you don't get that aggregation, because moisture is part of the whole life process in the soil, above ground and below ground, folks. So come over here and I want to show you another bed that needs a little bit more attention. Pretty dry down here, folks. Now, problem I've had is time, and second to that, a false sense of security, knowing it's cold weather and you think the soil's going to stay damp if it rains a little bit. Well, in fact, it doesn't. And I reckon a lot of you got a similar problem to what I'm having here. Some of these beds are not producing enough humus and they need activating. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can do to your garden bed to activate them again. Simple stuff, and that's not really requiring a lot of digging or shoveling. I'm just going to hydrate the garlic chives here because I just transplanted them. I normally recommend using our liquid gold just to water them in to settle them down, but at the end of the day, any water is better than no water at all. So whether you've got a liquid fertilizer or a stimulant added to it, just make sure you water them. Now, the other thing I noticed the other day, and I've been trying to hydrate this garden bed as much as possible, because I'm trying to keep the life in the soil, and I'm talking about the microbial life in the soil, active. And part of the process is aeration. Well, not aeration, but airflow. So we need air and moisture. They're the two key elements that we need to have in a garden bed, or any garden bed or ground or raised bed, so that your plants can actively grow and the microbes can actively populate and, you know, carbon cycle everything that we're doing in a garden. Now, I've just noticed here that because I've been working on it slowly, I'm not getting the pooling that I was getting earlier on. Well, not today, but yesterday and the day before. I'm just trying to create a bit of a pool here to show you if it's dry. Well, it is. It's bloody draining now because I've hydrated it. Now, let's find another garden bed. I reckon there's another one a little bit further up that's not as well hydrated. Well, this one here. Now, truth is, I've been working on all the beds to get water into them, and this is the problem I find, that because we've got a soft rose head here, this is what I'm talking about, this little thing here that allows the water to come out softly, you know, without flattening the plants and all things like that. We tend to think, oh geez, that looks like a lot of water, but if you were to actually time that, you know, it's a hell of a bit of time to actually fill a 9-litre watering can. So in the time that I've just been talking and watering this garden bed, I haven't quite hit 9 litres worth yet. So keep in mind when you're watering a garden bed, it looks wet on top, but you really need it to penetrate deep down below. Now, the problem with that is, and like me, if you haven't been keeping your garden bed hydrated on a regular basis, irrespective of the weather, water is important and it's vital. You're going to need to do something extra. Either sit here with a hose, you know, going over it and over it, letting it soak in, and then coming back and going over it again to try and get that moisture to penetrate down below. You can try and do that, and that can take minutes, if not hours, and days sometimes. Or you can try and just use a garden fork. Now, I didn't design it like that, but I could sure tell you that we've dug up some serious roots to cause it to buckle like that. Now, what I've got here is a garden fork. You can use a hand fork, and all you need to do is get the airflow in there by puncturing holes and wiggling back and forth. It sounds like crazy stuff, and I know many of you already know this, but how many of you actually actively practice this when you find water is not penetrating through down below? Because we need the moisture there. Without the moisture, there's no cycling. It'll dehydrate and everything will die. So, and the other part about this is PSI, which is the pressure, like in car tyres, and the same thing goes with the earth. So roots can actively penetrate comfortably up to 150 psi, and that's where most of the activity and the life exists within the soil. You know, the roots can go up to 200 psi and further, meaning more compacted soil, more pressure required to penetrate through. But what happens to the roots that have to penetrate through 200 psi? They're stripped of any, you know, fungal hyphae network that exists. So you want your soil to be around 150. That's the sweet spot for where microbes can be actively working and the roots are growing and networking with the soil below, or the microbes below. So by doing this, you can see the amount of holes I've put in here already, and obviously be careful a little bit with the small plants. We're going to fill these holes up with water and get the water down deep below where we need it. And once we've done this and we can see it penetrating through, go back and puncture the holes again, because with the one application and the one round ain't going to be really enough. You really need to go over it a couple of times. And then, and depending on how big the holes are too, go back and sprinkle some compost into the holes, or at least on top of them, before you water it again. What we're doing is just feeding the life in the soil. We're putting some beautiful carbon back into the soil, food that is, so that the microbes can feed off and turn it into soluble nutrients that the plants will take up later on. So it may take 1, 2 or 3 times before you actually get the water penetrating deep down below where you need it, and it's always good to inspect before you go back and mulch the whole surface. That's if you haven't got mulch on there already. Getting there, have a look at that. Moist, still a little bit dry at the bottom. See what I mean? Still a little bit dry. So we're going to keep punching holes and adding water, because we need to activate the life down to about 150 mil, folks. That's where the party is. So if you can activate it down to 150 mil, some of my beds, most of my beds are like that. 1 or 2 like this one here are struggling a little bit. So once you activate it, then you've got the moisture going down there and the airflow's going in there, and you've got the organic matter being sprinkled over the top with the mulch. It's the recipe for heaven. You're going to have the best plants growing this springtime. So, hydrate your garden, punch some holes into it, and give it a top up with a bit of nutrients. My preference is the planting mix. And speaking about planting mix, folks, well, the labels, or the ink on the labels on the bag has been pretty average, so we had a bit of a problem. And we've come to the conclusion they're going to get reprinted all again, so we're discounting these to clear, literally clear. So yeah, no, we're not here trying to make a special on every day. Simply, we just had a bit of bad luck. But we're going to clear these bags because the content inside is perfect. The bag is NQR, but the product inside is Maresi. Check it out on vasilisgarden.com. Not the Vasilis Garden, just Vasilis Garden.